Welcome back, Western Civ. Today we're here to talk about the rise of colonies that the Spanish are going to set up in the western side of the globe. As we are Western Civ, of course, we're going to be discussing their impact on the Americas. And so let's go ahead and get started. Now, as you can see, my Prezi is awesome. A little bit of inspiration for your board game stuff. You can see the France and England going this way, and Spain and Portugal going this way. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, so we're here. Now what are we going to do? By the mid-1500s, Spain claimed a huge empire stretching all the way from California all the way down to South America. And I'm talking down to the tip of South America, all the way down past Chile and Argentina in the present day. So you can see it right here. All the areas in red, those are all parts of the Spanish Empire. This is going to be a massively wealthy empire, and they are going to control, honestly, this is close to a third of the world at one point in time. So they're going to be very, very wealthy, very, very strong militarily. All right, now what's one of their number one priorities? Spreading Christianity, of course. So why do you think the explorers feel that they had to convert the natives? Now, that's not a bad answer, Aaron Wilson, but let's keep going forward. So, to Spain, winning souls for Christianity was just as important as winning land. The Spanish, with the help of the Catholic Church, are going to work to convert the natives by building churches and regulating Spanish settlers, which is actually kind of nice, surprisingly enough. Clap it up for the Spanish. Not bad. Being nice for about 10 seconds. But we know that that's not going to last for forever. So, they're going to also begin to control trade. The most valuable thing going to Spain from the Americas was, of course, gold and silver, which was discovered in main parts of Central America. Now, right here, you can see an early Spanish gold mine. What is wrong with this Spanish gold mine? Look really closely. Trying to think about it for a second. I'm flipping. Hi, how are you? Hi, thank you, ma'am. So, as you can see right here, there are no rafters to support this mine. The passages are very, very small. It's very dark. And then also, another big problem is gas leaks. If, hypothetically, gas were to leak out of a methane pocket underground and one of these lanterns were to catch a spark, the entire thing's going up. But here's the worst part about it. Do you think that the Spanish were the ones working down in these mines? I don't think so. We'll talk about who did that in a little bit. Now, the colonies are also going to ship raw materials to Spain. This word right here is extremely important. What is a raw material? That is exactly right, Siani Scott. Good job. A raw material is a thing that's not processed yet. It hasn't gone to a factory. It hasn't been made into anything yet. It's at its most basic form. So that's examples of like types of food crops like corn or anything you can grow on a farm, cotton and sugarcane. Now, sugarcane was used to make molasses, of course, sugar, and also rum. However, sugarcane is going to have to be grown on very, very large plantations. It's going to need a lot of workers. So, now, what do you think that why do you think they use children particularly to cut down sugarcane stalks? That's exactly right. Good job. The children are actually closer to the ground, so they could actually get the entire sugarcane stalk. So, now, as you can tell, with a vast amount of crops like this is what sugarcane looks like in the present day. You can actually cut this stuff off and chew on it if you'd like, and it still has a sugary taste to it. But this is what sugar comes from. With all of these new materials and with all of these new exports coming out of the new worlds, what they're going to need is a huge labor force. So we're going to keep talking about that as we keep going, though. Now, laws are going to forbid colonists from trading with anyone but Spain. Now, these laws are also called embargoes, all right? An embargo prevents you from trading with anyone except for a specific party. Now, Spain is going to send manufactured goods back to the colonies, though, for these raw materials, like clothes, building materials, guns, ammunition, tools, things like that, anything that's gone through a factory. All right, this is very important. So we have these silver mines. We have these sugar plantations. Who's going to work these things? Not the Spanish. They're going to force other people to work for them. And they used a system called the encomienda. All right. Now, the encomienda is a system of forced labor. And do you think you were paid for the encomienda? No, exactly. Not at all. You were actually forced to work because if you didn't work, you were going to die. So, the encomienda was not for slaves either. Slaves were very, very expensive. how much do you think the average slave cost around, let's say, hypothetically, even though it's not this time period, how much do you think a slave cost in early 1800s, theoretically speaking? Ugh, close, actually, but not really. $1,000 for a very good male slave. A very good male slave was about $1,000. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot today, but back then, that's a huge amount of money. So they're very, very expensive for one person. And it's pretty awful that we're even talking about right now buying a person, but they're very expensive. So the Spanish are going to save money by enforcing this thing called the encomienda. The encomienda is going to give colonists the right to force natives to work for them by law. If the natives refused, the conquistadors had full right to hunt them down and kill them, and even kill their families and destroy their homes. This is an example of the encomienda right here. Notice right here, this is a white man, so this is a Spanish settler, and he is forcing these people to work for him. Now, these aren't slaves, these are natives. These are the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca, the ones left over that weren't killed by smallpox, measles, or influenza. So the encomienda is a very, very important system that you need to remember. Also, here we go. Now, the natives are going to be mainly used to work in the mines and on the plantations. The mines are going to kill thousands of natives through very poor conditions like no ventilation and exhaustion. So the native children were actually used to get into the very, very small holes and in the mines and actually used to excavate these valuable pieces of metal. The thing about it is, though, is a mine is pitch what? It's pitch black. So how do you see? They would actually have the native children tie candles to their head so they could see and then drag these carts that were upwards of like 500 to 600 pounds. That's insane. So the encomienda is going to force these people to do this work for them. All right, so the dying natives are going to create a huge labor shortage. Now, the Spanish are going to begin to bring in slaves by the boatload after a lot of these natives start dying from diseases like smallpox, measles, influenza, who start dying from starvation because they can't farm for themselves. It's a really, really bad deal. Remember, history is written by the conqueror, not by the conquered, okay? So, colonial society and cultural, though. So, cultural diffusion, yeah, is going to begin to blend native society with Spanish. Cities and towns are going to include homes, markets, government buildings, harbors, etc. Social classes are going to begin to pop up. This isn't that important. Now, one very important thing, though, is the new subgroups that are going to be created through this colonization. Mestizos are anyone who is a mixture of native and European descent. So if you are a Native American and you were your parent, or let's say hypothetically you are a mestizo, that means your parents were, one of your parents was a European and the other one was a native. And then there are mulattoes, and mulattoes is an African person mixed with a European descended person. So, now did these people get full rights? Of course not at all. So, now let's jump across the map though real quick, because there are going to be two particular countries that are going to try and get in on all this new world action other than Spain and Portugal. And as we know, due to the line of demarcation, remember, the line of demarcation, do not forget that. Due to the line of demarcation, Portugal was only in the tip of Brazil. But the other two European countries that are going to want to get in on this, and they are allowed to because they are not Catholic, is England and France. So, moving forward though, North America is going to be colonized mainly by other Europeans because Spanish and Portugal are going to be settled in Central and South America. And as you know, most people from the U.S. are descendant from English or English Europeans. So now, building a new France. France is going to be the first ones to get dibs. So by the mid-1500s, the French occupied nearly half of North America. Half of it. That's huge. The French put their main focus in the Canadian area, and they're going to call it New France. That's why people from Quebec speak what? Exactly, French. So the French population is going to grow very, very slowly, though, at first, because they don't have a lot of very large settlements, and their main source of revenue is furs and fishing. So they were actually getting a lot of beaver furs and pelts and muskrat, and ox, and things like that, and fishing is going to be very important for their entire economy as well. So the French Empire is going to eventually stretch from Canada all the way down to the Mississippi and into Louisiana. Huge. Now the fun fact about this right here, the fact that the French were in Louisiana, try and listen to anyone from Louisiana speak Cajun. Cajun is a derivative form of French. You can see this, what is that very, very special word again? What is it? What is it? Cultural diffusion. There you go. So that is going to happen in like the Louisiana area, and the Creole language and the Cajun language is actually going to be originated from France because they were going to be the first ones to colonize that area. Even though, ironically enough, when you think about it, a lot of people had colonized it a long time ago with the Bering Strait. The Native Americans were here first, but no one cared about that. So, All right, now, how many colonies did the English have at first? 13. Very good. You should have learned this in like 5th grade-ish area. Now, the first permanent colony was in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. The settlers would not have survived, though, without the help of the Native Americans. They even went through this whole era during the 1600s known as the Starving Times. Now, the Starving Times was literally when everybody was starving. And that was from 1608 to 1609. And during the Starving Times, we actually have evidence of this woman named Jamestown Jane. They ate her. Like, people in Jamestown ate other people. It's kind of gross. And anyway, the colony is going to find its money in one particular item, though. What item do you think the people in Virginia are going to discover? Tobacco. Very good. So this is going to be a huge cash crop that all of the natives in English are going to want, and in England are going to want, and in Europe are going to want. So does anybody know how rich people in European countries would do tobacco? They wouldn't smoke it because that was too below them. They wouldn't chew it because it messes up your teeth. They would actually do this stuff called snuff, and it's powdered tobacco, and you take a little fingerful of it, and you snort it up your nose. It's really, really gross. Anyway, now the Pilgrims, also known as the Puritans, like you might as well just cross this out and call them Puritans, okay? The Puritans are going to land in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Now, the Puritans were English Protestants looking for religious freedom because the English Civil War had driven them out, okay? We'll talk about that more when we get to the revolutionary stuff. But the Puritans, or Pilgrims, are also going to survive with the aid of the natives and a strong government established by the Mayflower Compact. Now, this is something that you're going to learn as well in U.S. history. But the Mayflower Compact is very important because it's the first time that real government had been set up in this new area. Now, the Mayflower Compact, though, is an idea of self-government. The colonies were supposed to govern themselves. All right. Right here, you can see the Puritans actually like working with the natives. Now, are these relationships going to last forever? No. We're going to screw over them, too, as well. I mean, at one point, literally during the French and Indian War, a man named Pontiac, a chief of the, I think it was the Powhatan tribe, I'm not sure though, don't quote me on that. The Pontiac was a tribal leader, and he raided Fort Pitt, where is current-day Pittsburgh, for all of you that know where Pennsylvania is. And as a gift to make him stop invading them, they gave him blankets covered in smallpox. Way to go, Europeans. Way to go. All right. Anyway, so the Mayflower Compact is an agreement that has set down how to rule the colony of Plymouth. Now, Plymouth was founded in 1620, and it was all about self-rule with the Mayflower Compact. And remember, these people were like evading religious freedom, or like they wanted religious freedom. Excuse me. The English colonies are going to stretch from New York all the way down to Georgia, and if you can come in tomorrow, I will give you extra credit on your midterm if you can tell me, have a list of all 13 colonies. Actually, no. Tell you what. Don't have a list. You need to be able to recite all 13 colonies to me. And if you were the first one to come in here from each class section, I'll give you extra credit on your midterm. Now, they would grow very fast, and the southern colonies are going to grow the most in wealth because they're going to serve these great new cash crops like rice. Rice grows fantastically in the South, and especially in South Carolina. Tobacco, and then as well as cotton. But cotton production isn't going to really pick up until much later in the 1800s. So, governing the colonies, though. Now, the colonies are going to be governed by their European founders. Governors are going to be appointed to run most of the colonies, except for the ones like Plymouth, because they were actually founded on religious freedom. Governors, though, are going to be reporting back to the monarchs. All right, so struggles for power as well. You can't have anything without a struggle. So there is going to be a huge dispute over future land in the colonies when the French and Indian War is going to start, because France and England are going to battle for land with America. Now, oddly enough, the French and Indian War is not one war. It's a mixture of 5 different wars. It's like the King's War, the 7 Years' War, and several others as well. Now, anyway, the England is going to battle for land in America, and its conflict is going to spread all over the world. It's actually the First World War. The French and Indian War should have been considered the First World War. Fighting is going to break out in Europe, in Africa, and even in India because of all these places where the British and the French were stretching out into. Because Britain was in India, and they were in China, and they had already begun like imperializing parts of Africa, and we'll get to that, and that's going to be one of the main leading starts to World War I when we get to that whole era. But we're still pretty early on right now because we're in like the 1550s to the 1600s. So fighting is going to occur in Europe and even India. The British are going to take control of Canada from France, and the Treaty of Paris is going to end the conflict and ensure British dominance in North America for now. Because for most of the time while we were in America, France and Spain actually still controlled most of the continent until Manifest Destiny and everything else. But you'll learn that in US 1. So Very good job. I will see y'all tomorrow. Have a great evening.